The sun had barely risen over the city of Malaga, casting a warm, golden hue across the sprawling mansion that sat atop the hills overlooking the Mediterranean. Don Jose sat alone in the grand dining room, the vast table that once hosted lively family dinners now covered in a thin layer of dust. His hand trembled slightly as he lifted the small porcelain cup to his lips, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee filling the air, a small comfort in the otherwise empty house. The house was too quiet. The echoes of footsteps, laughter, and conversation that once filled these halls had long since faded, leaving behind only the soft creak of old wood and the distant crash of waves against the rocky shore. Don Jose, now 74, had spent the last few years in increasing isolation, his once robust health now a distant memory. The heart surgery had left him weakened, and although the doctors assured him of his recovery, the spark that once animated him seemed to have dimmed. His thoughts drifted to his late wife, Isabella, whose portrait still hung above the fireplace in the sitting room. She had been the heart of the home, a lively and generous woman who filled every room she entered with warmth. Her death had been a blow from which he had never fully recovered, and without her, the house felt more like a mausoleum than a home. As he sipped his coffee, Don Jose heard the faint sound of footsteps approaching. The door to the dining room creaked open, and Ana, his young nurse, stepped in. She was in her mid-20s, with a warm smile that seemed out of place in the cold, formal surroundings of the mansion. Her presence had become a small but significant source of comfort to Don Jose, who found solace in her gentle care. "Good morning, Don Jose." Ana greeted him, her voice soft but cheerful. "How are you feeling today?" He gave her a faint smile, grateful for her presence. "As well as can be expected, Ana. The house is quieter than usual, I think." Ana nodded, understanding the unspoken sadness in his words. She had only been caring for him for a few weeks, but she had already grown to care for the elderly man, whose loneliness was almost palpable. As she began her morning routine of checking his vital signs and ensuring he took his medication, she chatted lightly about the weather, the news, and anything else that might distract him from his thoughts. Don Jose listened, his gaze drifting out the window to the gardens below, where Isabella had once spent hours tending to her beloved flowers. The gardens had since grown wild, much like his life, untended and forgotten. But Anna's presence was a balm, and as she spoke, he found himself relaxing slightly, the heaviness in his chest easing just a little. For the first time in what felt like years, he felt a flicker of something he had long thought extinguished, hope. As the days turned into weeks, Ana and Don Jose fell into a comfortable routine. Each morning, she would arrive promptly at 8 a.m., bringing with her a breath of fresh air that seemed to lift the oppressive silence that hung over the mansion. Her duties as his nurse were simple enough, administering his medication, ensuring he ate properly, and accompanying him on short walks around the grounds. But it was the conversations they shared that began to form a bond between them. Don Jose, once a man of few words, found himself opening up to Ana in ways he hadn't expected. He spoke of his life before Isabella's death, of the business empire he had built from the ground up, and of the children who now lived their own lives far from Malaga. He told her stories of the city in its heyday, of the people he had known, and the deals he had made. Ana listened intently, fascinated by the depth of experience and wisdom that Don Jose carried. In return, Ana shared bits of her own life. She spoke of her humble upbringing in a small village outside of Malaga, of her dreams of becoming a nurse, and of the struggles she had faced along the way. She spoke with a quiet resilience that Don Jose admired, and he found himself looking forward to their conversations more than anything else. One afternoon, as they walked slowly through the overgrown garden, Don Jose paused by a bed of roses that had once been Isabella's pride and joy. The flowers were still beautiful, though they had grown wild in her absence. He reached out to touch one of the blossoms, his expression softening with a mixture of nostalgia and sorrow. "She loved these roses," he murmured, more to himself than to Ana. "She spent hours here, tending to them. I never had much of a green thumb myself, but Isabella, she could make anything grow." Ana watched him quietly, sensing the depth of his loss. She had heard enough about Isabella to know how much she had meant to Don Jose, and how much her absence had affected him. "You could always start tending them again," she suggested gently. "It might be a way to feel closer to her." Don Jose looked at her, surprised by the suggestion. For a moment he considered it, but then he shook his head. "No, it wouldn't be the same. This garden was hers, not mine. It wouldn't feel right." Anna didn't press the matter, but she made a mental note to come back and tend to the roses herself. She didn't want Don Jose to lose the connection to the woman he had loved so deeply, even if it was through something as simple as a flower. As they continued their walk, Don Jose found himself thinking about Anna's words. There was something about her that made him feel understood. It was a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time, and he wasn't sure what to make of it. The days passed in a similar rhythm, with Anna becoming an increasingly important part of Don Jose's life. She was more than just a nurse. She was a companion, a confidant, and perhaps even a friend. And as their bond deepened, so too did the quiet suspicion that began to brew in the minds of those around them. The tension in the air was almost palpable as Maria sat across from Anna in the grand sitting room. The room, once a lively space filled with laughter and conversation, now felt oppressive under the weight of unspoken accusations. The large windows that overlooked the gardens did little to alleviate the coldness that had settled between the two women. Maria's eyes, sharp and probing, studied Anna with a mix of suspicion and protectiveness. She had arrived at the mansion unexpectedly, her visit prompted by the growing concern she harbored for her father. Though her own life in Madrid was demanding, Maria had always kept a close watch on her father's affairs, and the frequent mentions of this young nurse in their conversations had triggered alarm bells. "I'm sure you understand why I'm here, Anna," Maria began, her voice measured but firm. "My father is very dear to me, and I've noticed he's been speaking about you quite often. I wanted to meet the person who has become such an important part of his life." Anna nodded politely, sensing the underlying tension in Maria's words. "I understand, Senora Maria. Your father is a wonderful man, and it's been a privilege to care for him." Maria's expression remained guarded. "I'm sure it has been. But I need to be clear. I'm very protective of my father, and I've seen how vulnerable he's become since his surgery. I hope you can appreciate my concern." Anna felt a pang of defensiveness rising within her, but she kept her tone calm. "I care about Don Jose's well-being deeply, Senora. My only intention is to ensure he's comfortable and cared for." "Is that all?" Maria's voice took on a sharper edge. "I've seen situations like this before, Anna. A young, impressionable woman becomes close to an older, wealthy man, and suddenly, there are all sorts of complications. I just want to make sure that your relationship with my father remains professional." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and uncomfortable. Anna took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I assure you, my relationship with Don Jose is entirely professional. I have no interest in anything beyond his care." Maria's gaze softened slightly, but the tension remained. "I hope so, Anna. My father has been through enough. He doesn't need any more complications in his life." The conversation ended on that note, and Maria left shortly after, her presence a lingering shadow in the mansion. Anna watched her go, feeling a mix of frustration and sadness. She understood Maria's concern, but the confrontation had left her feeling uneasy. She had grown to care for Don Jose, perhaps more than she should have, and now those feelings were being questioned in ways she hadn't anticipated. Later that day, as Anna prepared Don Jose's dinner, she couldn't shake the conversation from her mind. She was careful to hide her emotions as she brought the tray to his room, but Don Jose, perceptive as ever, noticed the change in her demeanor. "Is everything all right, Anna?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Anna hesitated for a moment before nodding. "Yes, Don Jose, everything is fine." But even as she said the words, she knew they weren't entirely true. The bond between them, once so simple and pure, now felt complicated and strained. And as much as she wanted to reassure him, she couldn't ignore the growing suspicion in the back of her mind. Was she getting too close? Was she crossing a line she had sworn she would never cross? The weeks following Maria's visit were difficult for Anna. The once easy and natural connection she had shared with Don Jose was now tinged with an uncomfortable awareness. Every time she laughed at one of his stories or sat with him during their walks in the garden, Maria's words echoed in her mind, making her question her own intentions. One chilly morning, as Anna was preparing to head to the mansion, she received an unexpected phone call from the hospital. Don Jose had been admitted again, his condition suddenly worsening overnight. Anna's heart sank, and without a second thought, she rushed to the hospital. When she arrived, she found Don Jose in a sterile, white room, hooked up to monitors that beeped steadily. His face was pale, and his eyes fluttered open as she entered, relief washing over his features when he saw her. "Anna!" His voice was weak, barely more than a whisper. "I'm glad you're here." She took his hand, squeezing it gently. "I'm here, Don Jose. Everything's going to be all right." But as the day wore on, the reality of the situation began to settle in. Don Jose was frailer than ever, and the doctors were concerned about his recovery. Maria and the rest of the family arrived later in the day, filling the room with a tense atmosphere. Anna stood by quietly as the family discussed his condition with the doctors, her presence acknowledged but not welcomed. Maria pulled Anna aside as they left the room. "Anna, I think it would be best if you took a step back for now. My father needs to focus on his recovery, and I believe it's better for him to be surrounded by family." The words stung, but Anna knew she had little choice. The family had the final say, and she didn't want to cause any more conflict. With a heavy heart, she agreed, stepping away from Don Jose's care. As she walked out of the hospital, her mind was a storm of emotions. Worry for Don Jose, frustration at being pushed aside, and a deep, aching sadness that she hadn't expected to feel. In the days that followed, Anna tried to focus on her other patients, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Don Jose. She missed their conversations, the quiet moments in the garden, and the way he had begun to rely on her presence. The mansion, which had once felt like a second home, now seemed distant and unreachable. One afternoon, a week after she had stepped away, Anna received a call from Maria. Don Jose's condition had stabilized, but he was asking for Anna. Maria's voice was terse, but there was an underlying tone of resignation. "He wants to see you," Maria said. "I don't know why, but he insists. Can you come?" Anna didn't hesitate. She was at the mansion within the hour, her heart pounding as she made her way to Don Jose's room. When she entered, she found him sitting up in bed, looking frail but alert. His eyes lit up when he saw her, and for a moment, the tension that had clouded their relationship melted away. "I missed you, Anna," he said softly. "I didn't realize how much until you weren't here." Anna felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them away, smiling through the emotion. "I missed you too, Don Jose." As they sat together, Anna realized that no matter what happened, she couldn't abandon Don Jose. Their bond, however complicated, was real, and she wasn't ready to let it go. Anna's return to the mansion was a quiet affair, marked by a sense of resolution rather than celebration. The family, though still wary, seemed to accept her presence, if only because it brought a measure of peace to Don Jose. The days passed slowly, each one blending into the next as she resumed her routine of caring for him. Yet, beneath the surface, Anna sensed that something had changed. One afternoon, as they sat together in the garden, Don Jose's voice broke the silence with a question that caught Anna off guard. "Anna, do you believe in second chances?" She looked at him, surprised by the sudden shift in conversation. His gaze was distant, focused on something beyond the horizon. "I think everyone deserves a second chance," she replied carefully. "Why do you ask?" Don Jose remained quiet for a moment before speaking again, his tone somber. "I've made many mistakes in my life, Anna. I was so focused on building my business, on securing a future for my family, that I forgot to live in the present. I lost sight of what really mattered." Anna listened intently, sensing that he was about to reveal something important. She didn't push him, allowing him to speak at his own pace. "When Isabella died," he continued, his voice tinged with regret. I realized how much time I had wasted on things that didn't matter. I thought that by accumulating wealth, I could protect my family, give them everything they needed. But money doesn't buy love, Anna. It doesn't bring people closer. It drives them apart. Anna nodded, her heart aching for the pain she could hear in his voice. You did what you thought was best, Don Jose. We all make mistakes. He sighed, a deep, weary sound that seemed to come from the very depths of his soul. I hid a great deal from my children, including the true extent of my wealth. I didn't want them to grow up spoiled or to rely on money for happiness. But now I wonder if that was the right choice. They've become so distant, so focused on their own lives. And I wonder if I'm to blame. Anna reached out and took his hand, offering what comfort she could. You did what you thought was right. You can't change the past, but you can still change the future. Don Jose looked at her, his eyes searching hers for something. Perhaps hope, perhaps absolution. I want to make things right, he said quietly, before it's too late. Anna felt a swell of emotion rise within her. She had grown to care deeply for Don Jose, and hearing him speak so openly about his regrets only deepened her resolve to help him find peace. Then let's start now, she said gently. Whatever it is you need to do, I'll be here to help you. He smiled, a small, sad smile that spoke of both gratitude and sorrow. Thank you, Anna. I don't know what I'd do without you. As they sat together in the fading light, Anna couldn't help but feel that they had crossed an invisible line. Their relationship, once rooted in professional care, had evolved into something deeper, something that neither of them fully understood, but both knew was real. The days after Don Jose's revelation were filled with a quiet tension, like the calm before a storm. Anna could sense that something was brewing, but she couldn't quite put her finger on what it was. Don Jose, for his part, seemed more introspective than usual, spending long hours in his study, poring over old documents and letters. One morning, as Anna was preparing breakfast, Maria appeared in the kitchen, her expression unreadable. Anna, we need to talk. Anna felt a chill run down her spine. She had been dreading this moment, knowing that Maria had never fully accepted her presence in her father's life. Of course, she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Maria led Anna to the sitting room, where she took a seat opposite her. I've noticed that my father has been spending a lot of time with you lately, Maria began, her tone measured. He's been talking about making some changes, about putting his affairs in order. I want to know what you've been discussing. Anna took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. Don Jose has been reflecting on his life, Senora Maria. He's been thinking about the choices he's made and how they've affected your family. He wants to make things right. Maria's eyes narrowed. And what exactly does that mean? Has he talked about changing his will? About leaving money to you? Anna shook her head, though she could feel her heart pounding in her chest.
No, Señora María.
He hasn't mentioned anything about his will. He's just trying to come to terms with the past. Maria's suspicion was palpable. I want to make something very clear, Anna. My father is not well. He's vulnerable, and I will not allow anyone to take advantage of that. If I find out that you're influencing him in any way, Maria, stop. Both women turned to see Don Jose standing in the doorway, his expression stern. He walked slowly into the room, leaning heavily on his cane, but there was a determination in his eyes that Anna hadn't seen before. Father, I'm just trying to protect you, Maria began, but Don Jose held up a hand to silence her. I know you are, Maria, and I appreciate that, but I am not a child. I am fully aware of what I'm doing, and I won't have you accusing Anna of things she hasn't done. Maria's face flushed with anger. Father, she's been spending too much time with you. She's influencing you. No, Don Jose said firmly. Anna is the only one who has been honest with me, who has cared for me without expecting anything in return. She has shown me more kindness and compassion than anyone else, and I won't allow you to insult her. Anna's heart ached at his words, but she knew this confrontation was far from over. Maria looked at her father, her expression one of hurt and frustration. Father, please, you're not thinking clearly. She's. I am thinking more clearly than I have in years, Don Jose interrupted. And I have decided to make some changes. Not because of Anna, but because I need to do what's right for myself, for you, and for the rest of the family. Maria's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, Anna saw the vulnerability in her, the fear of losing her father. What kind of changes? She asked quietly. Don Jose sighed, sitting down heavily in the armchair. I'm revising my will, Maria. I'm making sure that everything is in order. And I'm giving you and your siblings what you deserve, but I'm also making provisions for Anna. Not because she's asked for it, but because she has become like family to me. Maria's reaction was immediate. Father, you can't do that. She has no right. She has every right, Don Jose said, his voice firm. Anna has been there for me when no one else was. She has shown me what it means to care for someone without expecting anything in return. And I want to ensure that she is taken care of, just as I want to ensure that you and your siblings are taken care of. Maria stood, her hands trembling. You're making a mistake, Father. You're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. No, Don Jose said softly. I'm finally seeing things clearly. The room was silent for a moment, the tension thick in the air. Anna felt like she was holding her breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But then Maria turned on her heel and left the room, her footsteps echoing through the empty halls. Don Jose looked at Anna, his expression weary but resolute. I'm sorry you had to hear that, Anna, but it had to be done. Anna shook her head, her voice choked with emotion. Don Jose, I don't want your money. I never wanted any of this. He smiled gently. I know, Anna. That's why I'm doing this. Not because you asked for it, but because you deserve it. And because it's the right thing to do. Anna didn't know what to say. She had come to care for Don Jose deeply, but she had never expected this. The weight of his decision, of what it meant, settled heavily on her shoulders. But in that moment, she knew one thing for certain. No matter what happened next, she would stand by him, through every storm that was yet to come. The mansion was quiet in the days following Don Jose's confrontation with Maria. Anna could feel the shift in the atmosphere, a sense of impending change that weighed heavily on everyone in the household. Don Jose, though resolute in his decisions, seemed more tired than before, as if the burden of his choices had taken a toll on him. Anna continued to care for him as best she could, but the tension in the air was palpable. Maria had withdrawn, spending most of her time in her room or on the phone with her siblings. Anna suspected they were plotting their next move, but she chose not to dwell on it. Her focus remained on Don Jose, whose health had become increasingly fragile. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the mansion, Don Jose called Anna to his study. When she entered, she found him seated at his desk, a stack of papers in front of him. His expression was solemn, and Anna knew this was no ordinary conversation. Anna, he began, his voice steady but tinged with weariness. I've made my decision. My will has been revised, and everything is in order. Anna felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She had known this moment was coming, but now that it was here, she wasn't sure she was ready for it. Don Jose, you don't have to do this. He held up a hand to stop her. Please let me finish. I know you never wanted anything from me, and that's exactly why I'm doing this. You've given me something far more valuable than money. You've given me companionship, care, and a sense of purpose when I thought all of that was lost. He handed her a copy of the will. I've made sure that you're taken care of, Anna. Not just financially, but in other ways as well. I want you to have this house, to keep it as a place where you can always feel at home. It's too big for me now, but it's full of memories, and I want those memories to live on. Anna stared at the document in her hands, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never imagined that things would come to this. The weight of Don Jose's words, the significance of his gift, felt overwhelming. Don Jose, there's more, he said gently, cutting her off again. I've left the bulk of my estate to my children, as is their right. But I've also made sure that you're protected from any legal challenges they might bring. My lawyer has made it clear that my wishes are final. Ana felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she fought them back. Thank you, Don Jose. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, he replied softly. Just promise me one thing. Anything, Ana whispered. Promise me that you'll take care of this place, that you'll let it be a place of peace and joy, the way it used to be when Isabella was alive. Promise me that you'll find happiness here. Ana nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She wanted to tell him that she would do anything to honor his wishes, that she would cherish the memories he had shared with her, but the words seemed inadequate. Don Jose smiled, a small, tired smile that spoke of both relief and resignation. Thank you, Ana. You've been a light in the darkness for me. I'm grateful for everything you've done. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the moment pressing down on them both. Ana could feel the finality of it, the sense that something important had been resolved, but she also knew that this was not the end. The next day, Maria and her siblings arrived at the mansion. They were accompanied by a lawyer, a man in a sharp suit who looked as if he had seen more than his fair share of family disputes. Ana stood quietly in the background as Don Jose explained his decision to his children, his voice calm but firm. Maria's reaction was predictable: anger, disbelief, and finally, a cold determination to fight. Father, this isn't right. You can't just give away our family home to a stranger. Don Jose's expression didn't change. Ana is not a stranger, Maria. She has been more of a family to me in these last few months than any of you have been in years. I've made my decision, and it's final. The lawyer stepped forward, his voice measured and professional. Don Jose's will is legally binding. Any attempts to contest it would be unlikely to succeed. Maria looked at her siblings, seeking support, but they seemed more resigned than angry. They had come to accept that their father's decision was final, even if they didn't agree with it. With nothing more to be said, Maria stormed out of the room, followed by her siblings. Ana watched them go, feeling a mixture of relief and sadness. She had never wanted to be the source of conflict, but she understood that this was something Don Jose needed to do for his own peace of mind. When the dust settled, Don Jose seemed more at ease, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. Ana continued to care for him, but she could see that his strength was fading. The confrontation had taken more out of him than he let on, and she knew that his time was running short. In the quiet moments they shared, Don Jose would often talk about Isabella, about the life they had built together and the dreams they had once had. He spoke with a wistful fondness, as if those memories were the only things keeping him tethered to the present. One evening, as they sat together in the garden, Don Jose took Anna's hand in his. Anna, there's something else I need to tell you. She looked at him, her heart heavy with anticipation. What is it? I'm tired, Anna. I've lived a long life and I'm ready to go. But before I do, I want you to know that you've made these last few months bearable. You've given me something I thought I'd lost, a reason to keep going, even when everything seemed hopeless. Anna squeezed his hand, fighting back tears. Don Jose, you still have so much to live for. He smiled gently. Perhaps, but I'm ready. I've made my peace with the past, and I'm ready to be with Isabella again. Anna couldn't find the words to argue. She could see the truth in his eyes, the quiet acceptance of his fate. All she could do was sit with him, holding his hand as the sun set behind the hills, casting long shadows over the garden that had once been so full of life. As the darkness fell, Anna realized that this was the final stand, the moment when everything came full circle. Don Jose had fought his battles, made his decisions, and now all that was left was to face the inevitable with dignity and grace, and she would be there by his side until the very end. The morning after Don Jose's final conversation with Ana, the mansion was unusually still. Ana awoke early, as she always did, and made her way to his room to check on him. The door was ajar, and as she stepped inside, she immediately sensed that something had changed. Don Jose lay peacefully in his bed, his hands folded over his chest, his face serene. The rise and fall of his chest, which she had monitored so closely for months, was no longer there. He had passed away in the night, quietly and without pain, just as he had wished. Anna stood by his bedside, her heart heavy with grief but also filled with a strange sense of peace. She had known this moment was coming, had prepared herself for it, but nothing could have truly readied her for the finality of it. She reached out and gently took his hand, the warmth already fading from his skin. "Thank you, Don Jose," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Thank you for everything." The next few days were a blur of activity. The family returned to the mansion to make arrangements for the funeral, and though there were still traces of tension, they were overshadowed by the collective grief that hung over them all. Anna kept her distance, allowing the family to mourn in their own way, but she was present for every step of the process. The funeral was held at the local church, a solemn affair attended by close friends and family. Anna stood at the back, her heart heavy as she listened to the eulogies, the memories shared by those who had known Don Jose in his younger, more vibrant days. As she watched, she realized just how much he had meant to so many people, and how deeply his loss would be felt. After the service, Anna returned to the mansion, now hers by Don Jose's decree. The house, once so full of life and then marked by his loneliness, now felt like a place of transition, where old memories mingled with the promise of new beginnings. As she walked through the halls, she thought about Don Jose's final wish, that she would find happiness here, that she would make this house a place of peace and joy once more. It was a daunting task, but as she stood in the garden, surrounded by the roses that Isabella had once tended so lovingly, she felt a sense of purpose settle over her. She knew that the journey ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, both practical and emotional, as she navigated the responsibilities that had been entrusted to her. But she also knew that she was not alone. The memory of Don Jose, the lessons he had taught her, and the strength she had found within herself would guide her. In the days that followed, Anna began to make changes to the mansion. She brought in new staff to help restore the gardens, to bring back the vibrancy that had been lost over the years. She opened the doors to friends and visitors, creating a space where people could come together, just as Don Jose had wanted. And as she walked through the house, she could feel his presence, a comforting reminder that she was on the right path. The mansion was no longer just a relic of the past. It was becoming a home again, a place where life could flourish. One afternoon, as she was sorting through some of Don Jose's papers, she came across a letter addressed to her. The handwriting was shaky but familiar, and her heart skipped a beat as she opened it. "My dear Anna," the letter began, "if you are reading this, then I have already departed this world. But I wanted to leave you with one final message, something that I hope will bring you comfort in the days to come. You have been a blessing in my life, a light in the darkness, and for that, I will always be grateful. I leave this house to you not as a burden, but as a gift. It is a place of memories, yes, but also a place of hope. I trust that you will make it your own, that you will fill it with love and laughter, just as Isabella once did. Know that you have my eternal gratitude, and that I will be watching over you, wherever you go. With all my heart, Don Jose." Anna wiped away a tear as she folded the letter and placed it carefully back in the envelope. The words were a final confirmation of the bond they had shared, a bond that went beyond money, beyond duty, and beyond the confines of time. As the months passed, Anna kept her promise. She transformed the mansion into a sanctuary, a place where people could come together and find peace. And in doing so, she found her own peace, knowing that she had honored Don Jose's wishes, that she had done right by him. The mansion became a living testament to the life he had lived, and to the love and care that had blossomed between them. And as the sun set over the hills of Malaga, casting its golden light over the roses in the garden, Anna knew that she had found a new beginning, rooted in the past but reaching toward the future.